Joe's been the CEO and president of Greyston just a little bit more than a year and 2 or 3 months at this point now, and comes with a big resume. I won't. You can share whatever parts of your resume you'd like to. Um, we connected with one another a few months ago, and it was really fun. It was really fun, and I could tell Joe was in the midst of a lot of change and a lot of organizational work, and but it was just so nice to make the connection. Zen Peacemakers in Greyston do not have either a financial or a legal or a contractual relationship at this point, but I think we hit I think I can say we have a relationship that is more than any of those and deeper. Um, I mean, Greyston is literally part of our origin story, I guess one could say. So I don't want to take up any more time. I want to thank Joe so kindly for making time to come visit with us. This is a real gift to our community. We are recording, and just to let you know, and because we like to be able to replay for people who missed and so forth. So without taking up any more air in the room, I'll say thank you and welcome to Joe.
Well, thank you, Jeff, and thank you everybody for being online. It's good to see you. I wish we could all be in person, but thank you for taking the time to just hear a little bit about Greyston and where we are at this point in history, which I think is when you think about the history of Greyston and you think about just what our founder was all about, and what we share in common is our founder, Bernie Glassman, who I did not have the fortunate pleasure of meeting. Just some background on me. I have been with Greyston now for 3 years. I joined Greyston in 2018, February 2018, as the VP of Programs and Partnerships, and had come to Greyston after having 14 years or so experience in corporate America, Wall Street, in government, in elected and appointed office, and joined Greyston in 2018. And as Jeff said, was appointed president and CEO in April of 2020, so at the height of the pandemic. So I did know about the pandemic when I was interviewing Jeff, but unfortunately, it was just trial by fire, and that's probably as close to trial by fire as you can get to be a first-time CEO at the height of a pandemic, at the height of social unrest, at the height of so many things that were going on in this country. But we could see through our history and just where Greyston is now, which is what I wanted to talk about, just how resilient an organization this is. And I always say, to understand Greyston, you have to understand our founder, Bernie Glassman, who was a man motivated by a belief in something very simple yet profound. And he wanted to create hope, and he wanted to create thriving communities in this particular part of the country, Southwest Yonkers, which is about a half hour north of New York City. At the time of our founding, and I love to tell this story because this is all I know about Bernie, and I've heard it from Eve Marco, I've heard it from Rami Afal, who's a part of your group as well, who's on our board. I've heard all these great stories about Bernie and how he would literally just see folks on the streets and try to figure out a way of, well, what could we do as a society, as a community at this point in time, a Zen Buddhist community that was living in the Riverdale section of the Bronx, supporting themselves, baking cakes and things at the Greyston Mansion, which is where we got our name. He saw that there were just tons of homeless people, tons of folks dealing with substance abuse issues, dealing with justice involvement. They weren't working for all of those reasons. People wouldn't hire them. They couldn't get work, couldn't find work. At that time, folks were, dealing with HIV. They couldn't get jobs. They couldn't get housing. And Bernie just simply said, that's wrong. And it's an injustice when you have people in the society that want to work, that are able to work and can't work. We have to do something about that. And he would literally pull people off the streets that wanted to work with this community in Riverdale and help them bake cakes and whatever they were baking at the time. And that was the birth of what we called open hiring, which is just a simple way for us to bring folks into our Greyston Bakery organization to start a career as a bakery apprentice. And all they have to do is put their name on a list and they get the job. automatically when the next job becomes available. We don't ask for resumes. We don't ask you to fill out an application. We don't do interviews. If you want to work, you just put your name on the list, and when the next job becomes available, you get it. It's that simple, yet that profound. But that was the genesis, and it was founded on this idea of giving folks hope, beginning with a job, and then providing all the wraparound supports that went with that. At one point in time, Greyston had low-income housing. We had a childcare center. We eventually exited those fields because we felt there were other nonprofits and other providers that could do a much better job. We had a housing facility for the chronically homeless with HIV/AIDS. We just exited that this year, and again, transferred it to other partners who could do it. We had community gardens, obviously, to beautify and to provide food to folks here in Southwest Yonkers. We're transferring that to another organization here that's doing it. And we're focusing on what we do best, which is employment. Greyston Bakery has been around since 1982. Greyston Foundation, which owns the bakery, has been around, I believe, since probably the late 90s. It might be a little bit earlier, but it's been around for a while as well. And we provide workforce development training. We now call it the Greyston Employment Opportunity Center. And we're working with the same folks that Bernie Glassman worked with back in the early 80s, the folks with barriers, justice involvement, homeless, substance abuse, single moms. I mean, we really have to think about barriers in a broader sense because there are a lot of things that keep people from working. And now it's fear, right, with the pandemic. So there's a lot of different challenges folks are facing. And our expertise, what we've done very well for almost 40 years, is getting jobs for folks with barriers. So that is where we're going to be focused going forward. That has been my charge, my challenge to the team here since I became president and CEO. At the time of my appointment, it was just a month before George Floyd and all of the issues that were happening with just overall social unrest in this country. I started thinking about, what is my role, particularly as an African-American first-time CEO dealing with all these challenges? What should my role, what should my voice be, particularly with a social enterprise like Greyston? And I thought back to Bernie and how this whole organization was founded. And I realized I really didn't have to change or do anything but double down on what we do and what we do well. And that's giving people hope through employment. And so that's what we're going to be about for these we have a 2030 vision. We've changed our mission statement. We have new core values. Our new mission statement now is unlocking the power of human potential through inclusive employment, one person at a time. That's our focus. Our values are built around transformation. They're built around respect. They're built around non-judgment, compassion, empowerment. These are all things that Bernie was about. And when you think about the model, those values are embedded in it because we don't care about people's past. We care about their future and their ability to do a good job. So whether you're at the bakery or whether you're at our foundation, that is how we're looking at each person who comes through those doors. And if you're not ready, that's okay too. We don't judge you on the way in. We're not going to judge you on the way out. When you get to the point where you are ready, where you have resolved, you want to be successful, you want to provide for yourself, you want to provide for your family, we're going to give you that opportunity. We're going to give you that platform through employment, through training, whatever the needs might be from an employment perspective. We want to have a one-stop shop where folks can find hope and they can find a future for themselves and their families and their community at the end of the day, because we don't just help that one person. That person's attached to a family that's attached to a community that's in a society. So we believe there's a ripple effect of what we do here. So it's a very exciting time for us. We have a great board. We have a team in place, a new executive team in place. We are making, and get this, 50,000 pounds of brownies a day for Unilever, Ben & Jerry's. You can see the pints behind me. If you ever have a chocolate fudge brownie or Justice Remix or Half Baked or Netflix and Chilled, you're eating a Greyston brownie inclusion. Or you can just order them online at greyston.org. We have vegan as well as regular flavors. We sell the single serve brownies at Whole Foods and Kava, but they're all being made by folks who probably got no several times in their search for jobs. And I say we don't believe in second chance because a lot of our folks never had a first chance. So we're providing an opportunity up front. So anytime you buy those products, you're supporting somebody's future. Anytime you give to our foundation, you're supporting somebody's future and you're giving them hope through a job. So again, it's an exciting time to be a part of Greyston, to see the brownies being produced every day by the folks who received no, but Greyston said yes. To see just the resilience of this team. Just so you know, we never stopped running throughout 2020. So we were deemed essential. And I always say it's amazing that the folks that were once considered unemployable are now called essential. They worked almost 7 days a week throughout 2020. A record year, by the way, for the bakery in terms of the amount of production that we produced, the number of days that we were working. They never stopped. And thank God we didn't lose one person due to COVID at the bakery of all of 2020, which is just a testament to the team, but really, again, a testament to the resilience of the folks that work here and the measures that we put in place to protect our employees. So it was very humbling time, but just a time for me as president CEO to be proud of the team, to be proud of the work that we're doing, because it's incredible. So I could talk forever about Greyston and about just the work that we're doing here, but I'd love to maybe take a pause here and take questions from folks and just have a conversation. I wanted to kind of give you an appetizer, just kind of spark some discussion, but I'll open it up to questions now, if that's okay, Jeff. And
yes, that's fine. And what's nice about this smaller group is it's somewhat intimate. I can see everybody, so we don't have to use the electronic hand. We can use your actual hand. But before we do questions,
gotta put you in the gallery.
And now I realize Sandro and Chorin being in Brazil, this might be, and Roland in the UK, this might be a little bit challenging. But at least for the Americans, as soon as we get off, go to the website and buy a box of brownies. They are absolutely ridiculously good. They're really good. Perhaps the best brownie I've ever had. So if anybody...
It is the best brownie.
Yeah, and yeah, so many questions come up, but I want to leave this open for others here to
Sure.
To ask anybody. Please raise your hand and unmute if you've got something.
Yuri.
Hi, Yuri. Yeah, please go ahead and unmute.
Hi. I have a few questions, but I'll start with one and we'll see if I have time. I think I heard previously I read about you that the open hiring model that you have, you're trying to expand that.
Yes.
People. I work in IT, software development. I'm wondering, I assume, I don't know anything about it, but that maybe making brownies is a little lower skill set, a little lower barrier to entry. And is there any way to replicate or some differences that model to other places? Because if you think about where I work in, there's a lot of nowadays in the industry, a lot of boot camps where you teach someone how to program in like 3 weeks a month.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is an opportunity there. They're not going to be great developers until 3 years into it. So I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts about that kind of higher skilled open, which really gives you a future, right?
Yeah. No, that's an excellent question. We could probably spend 20 minutes on this. So back in February, I had a new board. We added 7 new board members to our board last year. But this past February, we had a strategic offsite where we came up with our 2030 vision. And so there's 3 points that we wanted to focus on, Yuri. One was we wanted to be a champion for stakeholder capitalism. So conscious capitalism, stakeholder capitalism, whatever term you want to call it, but we wanted to show how business could be used as a very powerful force for good. That's the first point. Second point is we wanted to be the leader, the noted champion for innovating in the space of workforce development and inclusive hiring, leading with our open hiring model. And then the third point, you're right, and then I'm going to get to your question. We strongly believe that there's about 10 million folks in this country who have some type of barrier to employment and they're not working because of justice involvement or whatever. If we just gave 40,000 job opportunities to those folks, that 10 million, that's about $3 billion in economic impact that inclusive hiring or open hiring could unleash in this country alone. Now, how do we do that is the question. So part of what we're going to be doing now, as part of our 2030 vision, is one, seeing the model replicated. And we have 5 different partners that we're working with right now, the Body Shop being one. They introduced open hiring at their distribution center in North Carolina. They later introduced it to their retail operations in the US and Canada. Rhino Foods, who makes the cookie dough that goes into the Ben & Jerry's ice cream, they've started open hiring in Vermont. At their manufacturing facility, there's a grocery store chain in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Giant Eagle. They're doing open hiring at their distribution center. We have a custodial services company in Rochester, New York, who's doing open hiring. So a lot of folks are doing it, and a lot of them are, and many are not doing it exactly like we do at the bakery, where it's just no questions asked, anybody can apply. Everybody has different flavors. Some focus on the reentry population. Some folks are doing open hiring except for, sexual offenders. Everybody's doing some type of it. But at the end of the day, I believe any organization can have some form of, whether it's open hiring or inclusive hiring, whether you're focusing on single mothers, whether you're focusing on reentry, or whether you're just opening the door wide the way we do. That doesn't mean that it can't be applied in every industry. Whether it's IT, whether it's hospitality, whether it's manufacturing like we are in. But we want to see this model replicated in some way, shape, or form across this country in whatever industry is possible. And what we also believe is that with inclusive hiring in particular, focusing on the middle skills, part of the Greyston Employment Opportunity Center at the foundation, we want to train folks in emerging industries. IT is one, healthcare is another. Hospitality is another field. If you can give folks, nationally recognized credentials in these middle skill jobs. So middle skill is, more than a high school diploma, but less than a college degree. We're training folks in IT. They're getting those, initial nationally recognized certifications, whether it's QuickBooks, customer service, whatever it might be. But there are entry level points into these jobs that you can start. And we're working with, like I said, whether it's the bakery or the foundation, the profile, generally speaking, is the same. They're folks that have little to no experience. They might be folks with justice involvement. They might be folks with, they might be homeless. It's the same person that we're working with. And whether we're going to bring them in through open hiring or we're going to bring them in through training, we have to have a broader view in terms of how we look at the folks that are looking for employment and how we can either get them trained or get them jobs. And so that's what we've been doing. So IT is not off limits. And I would say financial industry is not off limits either, because look, all those places need landscapers. All those places need maintenance folks. All of those places need a front desk person. You can make one job open hiring. It does not have to be the entire organization or the entire department. Think creatively about, who this job could be for. Maybe you want your front desk person to be that single mom who's at, the local Department of Social Services who's looking for work. That's one way of looking at it. So we take a very broad view, a very expansive view of how this can be replicated, how it can be implemented, and who we can target. Because again, 10 million folks in this country, and these are the folks that aren't in the unemployment numbers. These are the folks that have just dropped out of the labor force altogether. There's money on the table by not getting those folks jobs and bringing them into the workforces so they can support themselves and get off public assistance and divert them from getting back into the justice system. So I think the opportunities are endless, but we have to think broadly about how we tackle the issue. That was a long-winded response, but did I answer your question?
And Ilaria, I see your hand, but I want to step in here too. And in another part of our organization, this is really kind of my role. Zen Peacemakers is very international. So on this call, for instance, we've got 2 native Portuguese speakers, and Ilaria and Alex. I don't know if you guys speak German first or Italian first, or I've never asked you, but we always want to be, try to think about that too in term. And I fall into this all the time, where I'm using acronyms or I'm speaking quickly or kind of making references that are uniquely American, and they may not always carry over. So there's that. Ilaria, I saw you had your hand up, I think, or you're just waving to us. There you
Yes,
go.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Very well, thank you.
Great. First of all, thank you very much for the introduction. There was so much passion inside of your story. I have actually a lot of questions, but I will try to just boil it down in two questions. The first question is, what do you think they are the core pillars of a company that is inclusive by design? So Greyston is really like, I would say, the beautiful example of inclusion by design. And so what are the core pillars? Second is, so when you were talking about the organization, the way you structure the organization, what is the role that decentralization play in Greyston?
Mhm.
And is it possible to decentralize, so to have not a top-down structure, but more a different structure, by working with folks that they have, of course, a series of maybe issue of not being guided, and how do you approach the challenge of guidance? How do you give guidance and orientation?
Yeah. So I'm going to take your first question, and then I'll try and answer the decentralization question. You can let me know if I didn't hit the mark. On the core pillars, that's an interesting question. I appreciate that. I would say first and foremost, let's just think about the model itself, open hiring. You're bringing in anybody by doing that, right? Because you're not asking questions. At the end of the day, it's really just somebody who wants to work. But that person who wants to work they're going to have challenges, and we've experienced that in our 40 years. Folks with anger issues, folks with substance issues, folks with. I had folks sleeping in their car. It's the situations are quite challenging, and that leads to issues on the job, whether they're not showing up, or they're showing up and they're not as productive, or they're disruptive. But what all of those issues point to is that, and we've learned this, that there is a next evolution of human resources. So we've thought about that differently. So we had a social worker who would sit at the bakery. She was through a partnership we had with a local nonprofit here, but she was helping people with all of those issues, helping them find housing, helping them deal with childcare, helping them deal with child support, going to court with them. I mean, all of these issues that we were supporting. And she also supported everybody in the bakery, not just the open hires, but it was everybody. But what I'm getting at is those are investments that need to happen, which is why I like open hiring so much, because we've taken all the costs and all the time that's spent on keeping people out, and we're investing it in how do we keep the folks here, and how do we make sure that they're a good employee, how do we make sure that they're thriving professionally, absolutely, because we got to get brownies out the door, but also personally, because that does spill into how they perform on the job. That's a long explanation to say that I don't know if it's a core pillars as in the plural sense, but a company has to be invested in their people. And this is where stakeholder capitalism comes into play. You really got to have an expansive view of your role as an organization. It's not just about making a great product, which we do, or providing good service. It's not just about profit, which we have to make, or I can't continue to be in business. It's about what is my broader role here in this society, or particularly here in Southwest Yonkers. It's to really be a shot of economic adrenaline to this area, hiring people, making sure that they're thriving. And all of those things have ripple effects. When we give somebody a job, particularly like a justice involved person, and we have people that were in prison for 20 years and came and worked here, and now they're doing amazing. Those folks who come out of jail, and if they don't get a job within the next 60 days of being let out, they're going back to jail. That's how that's the research. That's not Joe Kenner saying it. That's what the research says. If they don't get a job within the next 60, 75 days out of getting out of prison, they're going back. That's a cost to society. We are diverting that cost. That's why I say, like, to give the 10 million folks jobs, you're saving money in public assistance, you're saving money in justice involvement, but you're also providing income to an organization, to an economy. People that weren't working before, that were actually costing the system, are now contributing to the system. So to me, a core value is really, you have to be intentional about your people. You have to want to invest in their success, and success, again, has to be broad. You just can't think about their performance on the job. You have to think about, are there other areas in their life that are impacting their productivity, leading to absenteeism, leading to disruptions at work, whatever it might be. You've got to be willing to make those investments in our people. If anything, COVID taught us, I think that was another lesson that we all learned. Like, companies started thinking about, oh, do we need to invest in mental health? We had grief counseling for some of our, because we were at one point in time, this was the epicenter of COVID in Westchester County, New York, which is where we're located. We had to make investments in, grief counseling, but we also had to make investments in getting this whole place, when we have 2 locations, but retrofitted for, disinfectant dispensers, masks. We had to set up plexiglass for our training classes, where all of our people were pretty much isolated so that they wouldn't be crowding together. All of those things were about safety. They were about health. They were about making our employees feel like they mattered, but more importantly, making them feel like they could come here and be safe. But every company in America had to go through that. So there's an intentionality to that you have to have, particularly if you're going to do open hiring, or it's not going to work. It just simply is not going to work. You can put it on your front door and you can put it in your marketing materials, but if you're not going to make the investments and you're not going to be intentional about it, it just won't work. It's not cut out to be I say brown washing and black washing because that's most of our client base. But if you're going to be using this as a marketing ploy, it just won't be a successful model for you, because you're going to have to make the investments in your people, or they won't be successful, and therefore you won't be successful with this model. So to me, the core piece of that is, do you have that stakeholder capitalism viewpoint? And again, that's a very broad statement to make, but you have to be intentional about employees and about their success. The decentralization question, and help me with this one, I want to make sure I got it. When it comes to replicating the model, we have decentralized a bit. So we are looking at different hubs within, particularly New York State. We have a hub in Rochester where we have somebody working with businesses and nonprofits to set up an ecosystem of inclusive employers that are working with a nonprofit to provide all the wraparound support, and the businesses get to provide inclusive hiring, open hiring in their own way. That's how we've kind of decentralized the problem solving of open hiring. We just started a hub here in Westchester County. We're looking at getting another hub in New York City. So that's a way of us kind of replicating ourselves and decentralizing the work that we do here in West Yonkers, New York. And we would love to see more, quite frankly, throughout this country. The Body Shop is probably our best example of a large employer. And they did it in all of US and Canada in terms of their retail operations. They're actually doing open hiring. They ask one question, which is, why do you want to work in our retail shops? But other than that, they're pretty much doing open hiring. They call it inclusive hiring, actually. But about 1,000 opportunities they've given so far to folks, which is incredible. So that's how we've kind of decentralized the work, but it's all kind of being run from Yonkers, New York. But we want to have more hubs. like this. We actually have a partnership in the Netherlands through a nonprofit called Start Foundation. They've got 21 companies over there doing open hiring too. So I like to say we don't want to be unique anymore. We pioneered the concept, but we want other folks to do what we're doing and in other industries and other contexts, because obviously life and government and policies are different in the Netherlands than in the United States. But this is a model that's clearly applicable in different industries, now different countries, and we want to see more of it. So I don't know if it was your decentralization question, but.
Yes, well, the question was more on the decentralization inside of the company.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of leadership, so this flat hierarchic model, if is applicable in such a company. Mm-hmm. So this is just a question, because we are Alexander and I, we are doing a project with artists and people with neurodivergent,
Mm-hmm.
so neurodivergency, and we have seen, so we have encountered a challenge in the point of decentralization. So how
Mm-hmm.
far can we leave them just to do the work without giving guidance? And that has been our, I would say, for the project, our biggest challenge. Yes.
Yeah.
So I wanted just to know your experience on this point, how much you can, leave the people free to work open and in an open and fluid way without control. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I streamlined the organization. When I first started, we had 7 members of our executive team, which I thought was a lot. So we're now down to 4. And it's myself, our VP, general manager of our bakery. We have a VP finance of operations, and we have a VP of strategic programs, which was my old role. It's just the 4 of us, and several responsibilities fall under each of the different VPs. And the idea is for those teams to we set the policy and then send them off to do whether it's finance, whether it's the bakery, whether it's our programs. We've now even we revamped the entire, we have almost maybe 80% new people now at the foundation. And that was by design, because we wanted to create the kind of organization I think you're talking about, where folks can come in and they can be just like our founder, entrepreneurial, proactive. We give you the policy, we give you your goals, you execute, and you just report back to us, which is why we wanted to have a smaller executive team so that we could just have easier decision making. And it's not, we had a VP of HR, we had a VP of marketing, we had a VP of development, we had all these different VPs, and it just, to me, it just wasn't necessary. We could consolidate some things because we all bring different strengths to the table. So we consolidated and we push it out to the teams to get the job done. And so far it's been working very well for us.
Ilaria, thank you. Great question, and great follow-up question too. That's really enlightening. Sandro, I see your hand. Thanks.
Well, I would like to question almost 2 things, because I'm from Brazil, and then I'm this movement to bring the Zamps Maker vision to here, to Brazil. So the order and the other part too. But I would like to ask you one question more to understand how the management works, because I've graduated in management here and work in state companies and NGOs working in this area of social responsibility, social enterprises, and this kind of thing. So I want to understand, there is the Greyston Foundation and there is the Greyston Bakery. How is this relationship? Because I've saw that Greyston Bakery is a B Corp, as profitable, if I understand right. And Greyston Foundation, it's a NGO. and works like that. But I would like to understand better this kind of relationships, how
Sure.
it works. And the second question is, the ZP vision, it's international. The Greyston Foundation has any kind of wish to develop this kind of relationship with Brazil, because I would love to see someday like Greyston Brazil Institute or some kind of that. But at least if it's to dream with a little dreams first, I would like to see and to help to see the Greyston website in a Portuguese version to start something, to make it possible to us to learn and to spread this kind of vision here too, because there is a lot of initiatives here that we can make contact. But if we can start translating this material, it will help a lot. So thank you.
No, thank you for the all good questions, and I can go a little deeper in terms of the management. So we have two separate entities, as you noted. It's Sandro,
Yeah.
Greyston Bakery, which is the for-profit company, and it's actually New York State's first benefit corporation. It was certified by B Lab, which provides the certification. So that's the bakery. It is owned by Greyston Foundation, which is the nonprofit. So the nonprofit handles all of our Greyston Employment Opportunity Center. So all the replication work, all the job training, job development work happens at Greyston Foundation. It is governed by, actually, we have two boards. So there's a Greyston board and there's a Greyston Foundation board. There's some overlap in terms of the members, but two of our members only sit on the Greyston Bakery board for independent reasons. So we have two boards. The executive team, so as I mentioned, there's four of us. I obviously sit over both. My VP of Finance, she is over both organizations. The VP of Strategic Programs, my old role, strictly foundation. So she's on the foundation payroll, but she works with our bakery because we are integrating the training so that our bakers can get the training too. And then I have the VP General Manager of the bakery, and he's obviously strictly the bakery, but we all work as a team. So 4-person executive team, 2 boards. Altogether, we have 19 board members between the two entities. So that's how we are structured, but 2 different P&Ls, our profit and loss statements, and 2 different boards with 1 executive team. So that's the management structure. International ambitions. So I mentioned we do have a partnership through the START Foundation in the Netherlands. I would love, since my wife is from Brazil as well, I would love to see some type of open hiring partnership take place in Brazil. And I would say to you, in a challenge, I had spoken to the B Lab group in Ecuador. I think they have a conference coming up soon. So I was a keynote speaker for them. I would love to see, maybe you should get involved with the B Lab group in Brazil. Let's figure out how we could create this whole ecosystem internationally. Because again, you're going to know your country better than we do. So what would open hiring look like in Brazil? How would you work with what would be a nonprofit partner in Brazil to provide support to the employees? It would be incredible to see that happen in Brazil. And then when I go visit, I can go spend time at the Greyston, Brazil location, wherever we want to have it. But I would love to see more international opportunities happen in the different countries, led by the people that live there and working with the B Labs of the world to see it happen. But that would be a dream to see that happen. And I think my wife would be ecstatic to see a Greyston opportunity in Brazil.
Here in Brazil, we have this B movement too, big force movement too, but we have a very more bigger scenario to the social and social network, social companies. In this vision, it's like B network. It's that, and social
Enterprises, social enterprises. Yeah.
Isso. Yeah, that's it. Here in Brazil, and we have a lot of space to do that, because even the social responsibility that it's another kind, but talks with this kind of vision. We have a lot of companies that could help in to spread this kind of vision. And even here in Brazil and in the United States, we are in a very difficult moment about jobs and about to reconstruct public policies too.
Yeah.
And we're very good to change experiences and change views and change partnerships to do that happens really starting as we could do possible, small with small actions.
Absolutely.
but starting something. I will be very engaged in that movement that you are interested to.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
If I could just insert here, and once again, my efforts always want to be as inclusive as possible, and I don't want to insult anyone who, if everyone already knows this, then forgive me. We've made some references to B Lab and B Corp, and for anyone who doesn't know, and I'm no expert by any means, but this is an international movement, you know. And I don't know that they would say it this way, but really to save capitalism in one way that you could say, and the goal B, I believe, stands for benefit corporation,
yes.
Or and you perhaps have heard the expression triple bottom line. You know, and I've been in executive positions in a lot of corporations, publicly traded and private, and profit really drives everything. In a triple bottom line environment, profit has to be part of it, but the other two P's are people and planet, typically. So benefit corporations, or B Corps, really are dedicated to, yes, being successful, growing, financially sound, etc., but doing so as cleanly and ethically as possible. And Joe may I can tell you from personal experience, I had a small business a number of years ago here in Colorado, and our Colorado lab group is very strong. There's a lot of activity in Colorado, but we went through the accreditation and certification process, and I was exhausted. And we were a small company with no physical location. We're a consulting firm. We didn't import any products. We didn't pollute the water. We didn't do anything. And we didn't quite qualify. We came very, very close.
Wow.
So the qualifications for becoming a B Corp are rigorous, and you can't, Joe used another phrase, but maybe you've heard the term, or maybe this is too much American slang, but you've heard greenwashing, where you're sort of pretending that you're environmentally conscious and stuff. You can't do that with B Corp. You can't get away with it. You really have to demonstrate that you really are taking care of your people and walking lightly on the earth, as it will, and being ethical. It's an extraordinary movement, and it's not just little hippie companies. Joe, maybe this has changed. My last contact, I understood Unilever was on the verge of or had already become a B Corp, and there's some other really big companies that that have qualified. I don't know if you want to say more about that, Joe.
Yeah, Ben and Jerry's is a B Corp that's owned by Unilever. But Unilever itself has not. But Ben and Jerry's definitely is, and obviously a great partner of ours. Danone, as you know, is probably another large organization that did qualify, but had some issues with their CEO. So we'll get to that. But yeah, so there are a lot of big organizations that are out there. I think there's about 4,000 altogether that have been certified B corporations in different industries, different sizes. And we've been B certified, oh boy, since 2000, probably 2012, I think was when we became a B corporation, and probably a few years before that we're certified by B Lab. So we've been at this for quite some time, and it is rather extensive. And to your point, Jeff, it's done, and I would love to have some type of certification for open hiring. It's done to avoid all of that greenwashing. So pretending can't happen with, there are literally hundreds of questions that you have to answer in the different categories of social, environmental, and governance that if you don't pass the muster, you won't get certified. So it's rather rigorous, but it's an excellent designation, and it lets people know that you're serious about stakeholder capitalism.
Anyone else have a question? This is really rich. Jim Hoden.
Yeah, hi there, Joe. Thank you.
Hi, Jeff.
I think my question really is about the evolution of Greystone, and what I imagined happened was Greystone was founded addressing a certain need, and when you address that need, other needs come up to address until you have gardens and daycare centers, the whole thing. So it sounds like you pared things back and restructured, and I was wondering how you still address those needs with daycare and community ones.
Yeah, I mean, going back, and I touched on this in the beginning, Jim. It's Greyston, the founder, Bernie Glassman. I think he was just so entrepreneurial and such a problem solver when he saw all the issues that you talked about, and that's how they weren't being addressed, quite frankly, by whether it was the government or by the local nonprofits. He just did it. Our bakers needed housing. All right, we need to build low-income housing. They need daycare. All right, let's just go build get a daycare center. And we found over time, and literally, I think it was probably a few months before I joined in 2018, we realized that, we are providing these things, but are we doing it with excellence? Do we really have the expertise to be doing it? And are there others that could do a better job? And so in housing in particular, there were great affordable housing developers at that time that were doing a better job of providing housing. So we sold the portfolio to those providers, and that continues to happen. And Westchester continues to build affordable housing here in this county. So we just partnered with the right organizations to do that. Childcare the same way. We have a whole child care council for this county that's dedicated to providing childcare to our employees. We also found that many of our employees weren't using the child care center, which I thought was interesting, but many members of the community were. So going back to Bernie, it's about thriving communities, but there were other providers that were just doing a much better job, that had the expertise, and we're getting the results. And I think part of being an entrepreneur is, knowing when, this is not working, and it could work better with other organizations. We do it. And I think that's part of being an entrepreneur. And more recently, whether it's, we call it Eson House, which was our housing facility for the chronically homeless with HIV/AIDS. Again, great program. But it started losing money. There were other providers, obviously, that could take on the responsibility. We did it. So all the folks that were living here, they're now living in other places, mostly in Yonkers, but in other parts of the county. They're still getting the support that they would receive from, Eson House here. That's a win-win for me. Like, let folks who know how to do something well do it. We didn't abandon the responsibility. We just gave it to the folks that were doing a much better job. Community gardens, that was actually one program that I would say was doing very well. We had 12 community gardens throughout Southwest Yonkers. Actually, today is the last day that they'll be under Greyston's purview. That we're going to the Yonkers YMCA. And why? The Yonkers YMCA has an amazing community wellness portfolio. They have a huge base of volunteers and youth. It makes perfect sense for them to be with the Yonkers Y. As we focus, as we focus on inclusive hiring and open hiring and employment, it makes more sense for us to focus on those things because it's the narrative just doesn't fit. Because I can talk about inclusive hiring and employment, I can talk about the impact that we're having on business, and then, oh, by the way, we have 12 community gardens. Just didn't make a lot of sense from a narrative standpoint, and just again, it's part of the evolution. But the gardens get to stay in Yonkers. It continues to thrive, and I think they're going to be better supported, quite frankly, by the Yonkers Y, because that's what they do. They are all about community activities. They're all about community wellness, and they can grow this program, I think, in a much better way than Greyston ever could. And quite frankly, this is the problem with nonprofits. You just got to know when you just can't do it all, and you need to focus and let the partners who do know how to do it, let them do it and do what you do well, and we'll do what we do well. That's, that takes a lot of humility, but it takes a lot of, it's tough too, because, the person who runs our gardens is an awesome person. I'm going to be sorry to not see her around, but she's going to be going to a home that's going to really put some investment behind it. And I am hoping they will take it to the next level. I'm actually sure of that. So it's part of, the focusing and making the right investments in what we do well, recognizing what we do well, and really staying true to our mission. And that way you don't get into the mission creep, because our mission is very clear, unlocking the power of human potential through inclusive hiring, one person at a time. That's all I'm working on for the next 10 years. And if the mission changes, that's fine too, because that's what Bernie was all about. Who knows what we'll be working on 10 years from now. But as far as this CEO is concerned, this is where our focus is going to be. And this is what we'll be doing. And we'll still continue to be a pillar of this community. We're just going to be a very disciplined member at this point.
That's great. Do you feel the people utilizing those services experience a larger community, and Greyston is also benefiting from a larger network?
Yeah, and because we've always been a part of this community, and we've always partnered with them, which is the funny thing about a lot of the different transitions that we've had. Our community gardens actually partnered with Yonkers YMCA. They actually run one of our gardens is with them. So it's kind of funny that they're going to take over all the gardens. But this is an amazing community of a lot of different nonprofits, affordable housing, mental health providers, food pantries. We're not going anywhere. But as folks in those different nonprofits dealing with different needs, and we tell people all the time, take the food, Feeding Westchester, which is kind of our food pantry organization. If folks are having issues feeding themselves and buying food for themselves, send them to Greyston so they can get a job and get trained for a job, so that they no longer have to use Feeding Westchester. Or if folks are some of our folks deal with childcare issues, we send them to Child Care Council of Westchester so that they can help them, whether it's subsidies or finding a provider. The community we're always going to be a part of, and it's a large, thriving nonprofit community. It's just, again, I think it's just a matter of everybody finding their place and their strength and really doubling down on that, so that we don't waste resources, which I felt was happening for a long time. We weren't good at it, but we kept trying to do it because we didn't want to let go. But sometimes you just got to make that tough decision and really let the other folks who are strong in those areas take the lead.
Great. Thank you, John.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Great questions. Alex, I think I see your hand up.
Yes, Jeff. Thank you. I would like to. So I connect on so many levels on what you say, Joseph. So thank you very much. And
thank you.
The question is not regarding, but I cannot not say it. So basically, you are breaking down many walls of classical business thinking. And this is what I really, I mean, I like it so much. And when you talk about it, you smile, and it's such a free smile. I love that. So I just needed to say that.
Thank you.
Because like many of our systems, and I'm a medical doctor, just for your information. I'm a medical doctor. I have a business background. Worked in financial industry for many years, and I know that. So my observation and experience is that most of our systems, they are so incredibly unflexible, and they are so stuck in this classical way of thinking that I just love what you do. Okay, so this I wanted to get rid of. However, my question is a completely different one. I would like to hear you a bit on your views on the team perspective. Because what you said about the connection between life problems and the working sphere or realm, they're also very present in all the companies and all businesses and all teams. And it's a bit like greenwashing. Nowadays, everyone is talking about work-life balance. But what it really means, most of the cases, is, get your life right so that you can work efficiently. and I guess that it's a bit different in Greystone Bakery. And so my question would be, what is, to your experience, the most important factors for teams working together very well, seeing that they are not picked to be a team, but they are just, as you say, they're just put together by this idea of inclusive hiring or open hiring. And as an expansion of that, what will be the perfect team size? Maybe there's an evolution to that. And the third question would be, so it's basically the same question, but about leadership. So how do you pick the leaders, so the right leaders for the right teams or the right people?
Okay, well, that's going to be I don't know how much time we have. How much time do we have for this? This is going to be no, yeah, you hit a nerve with that question, because that was one of the reasons why I wanted to change our mission statement, because I changed it from my predecessor. And we didn't really have core values, so we got them. And this was part of a full day exercise with the executive team and the board to really figure out who we are, what do we want to be in 2030, and how do we get there? And to your question, is it Alex? So to your question, it starts with the leadership. I think at the end of the day, it starts with, it's not only the leadership, but it starts there. I worked at Pepsi, so Frito-Lay, Gatorade, those guys. I was there for almost 10 years. And the former CEO, Ingenuity, always said is you can't change strategy until you change the culture. And I found that here. And the good news about having been here for 3 years is I kind of knew where the bodies were. I knew some of the issues that we were having, and I knew the culture wasn't where it needed to be. But I also knew that the mission statement at the time, our mission statement was growing open hiring through creating thriving communities through the practice and promotion of open hiring. And that really wasn't what we did. I mean, we did other things. We had, Eson House, we had a housing facility, we had community gardens. None of those things had anything to do with open hiring. So we had to change our mission statement, and we had to get values. And so the mission statement, like I said, is very much focused on leading with the open hiring model, but talking about inclusive hiring broadly and really focused on the individual person. That was important. But with the core values, it was really, what kind of people do I want working here? What kind of behaviors do I want to see modeled here? And as I said, it starts with the leadership, but I do believe that culture sits at your desk. So it's not just the CEO, it's everybody is responsible for culture, and you'll either design culture or you'll default. So we're going to design it. And our values are collaboration. Our values are empowerment. their respect, their non-judgment, transformation, compassion. Those are the people that I want working here. And if any of those 6 values are a problem for anybody, there are like 9.1 million open jobs out there. You can go work there in one of those other jobs, and Greyston's not going to be for you. But we're going to be very much focused on those things. We're going to be doing a whole rebranding exercise later this year to roll out the new mission statements, roll out the core values, but our whole performance management system now. So when we do our evaluations and all of that, we're looking at those things. How have you advanced open hiring? How are you leading? How are you collaborating? How are you being someone who's non-judgmental, like you're understanding people's story, you're listening, you're respecting the other person. They're kind of basic things, but it's, I think you have to put it on paper to say that, this is who we are and this is what we're going to do. And whether it's me or whether it's anybody else, we got to hold each other accountable to that. So, it's the executive team, it's the level below us, it's our board. Everybody's responsible for enforcing that. And like I said, we've had a lot of changes in the past. I'll leave it like that. A lot of changes in the past year. So you can figure it out. I went from 7-member executive team to 4. We made some, had to do some layoffs. We had to, we've transferred programs. We've discontinued programs. All that's design. And it's saying like, this is the kind of organization we want to be. Yeah, and I did, you tore down some walls, and none of this, and believe me when I say this, this was not easy stuff. This was hard. It was sensitive. It was, many cases painful, but you had to get there. Because if we all agree that this is the kind of organization we're going to be about, if these are the things we're going to focus on, if this is where we're going to make the investment, that means there are going to be some areas where you're not going to focus and you're not going to make the investments, and you got to figure out what you're going to do with those programs, people, whatever it might be. And again, I don't judge people when they come in, and I'm not going to judge you on the way out, but this is how the organization is going to be. So folks either have to align with that, or like I said, there are 9.1 million open jobs out there with other companies. You are welcome to work in those companies. But as far as Greyston goes, this is what we're going to be about. And that's buy-in from the board, from the executive team, and we push it on down. I don't know if that answered the question, but.
Thanks, Alex. Hi, Roland.
Hi. Let me switch my mic on. So I'm based in the UK, and I just listening to everything that's been said. This kind of seems to challenge a lot of what's taught in business schools about how to run a business. I wonder whether you could speak to how much you have a connection with kind of any business school research that you feed into on this, and what their reactions are to adopting this model.
Yeah. So thanks for the question, Roland. So I have my MBA, so I can tell you we are very disruptive in this space. And I worked for Fortune 50 companies. I worked for Pepsi. I worked for Chubb & Son, an insurance company. I worked for Lehman Brothers, an investment bank. And I tell people all the time, if you had told me at Pepsi that, we're now going to have this hiring system and we're not going to ask anybody questions and we're just going to bring them in, I'd look at you like you were crazy, because that, to the traditional HR person, that makes absolutely no sense, right? Until you see it, until you actually see it in action and you see it operate, it just makes no sense. And it is not going to be for everybody. And I think that's something that, we just have to be very clear about. This is not going to be for every single organization, because some people are just not going to be ready, or they just don't want to do it. And that's fine too. But it is a disruptive way of looking at hiring. That being said, I've spoken to my business school class at Pace University in New York City. I've spoken to Columbia. We have a great partnership with Babson up in Massachusetts. And they're actually looking at how we can take some of the learnings from the different regional hubs that we're setting up in New York, and figuring out how can we marry this with some of the research that's already being done by folks looking at systems, whether it's, what are investors looking for, what are employees and employers looking for in terms of finding and managing human capital. We want to marry our research with that to show if you wanted to do open hiring, here's how it would look, here's how it would work, and have somebody like a third party really study this, because we know it works. We've done our impact measurements. We could show how, the time to hire went from 30 days to 5 or 7. We could show how the body shop cut their turnover rate, and turnover means how many people left the organization. If they cut that in 2/3, and productivity went up 13%, but we would love to have an outside party really collect a lot more data, marry it with research, and just show why this is the best thing since sliced bread in business, and why, though disruptive as it may be, there is an economic impact, there is a social impact, and the business does get good talent. You get people that will be loyal to you. That's why they don't leave, because everybody else told them no, but you stuck by them. You not only hired them, but you invested in them. So they're going to stick with you. So the business gets a good employee, they make a good product or service, and PS, you have some social impact. It's win-win-win, right? So it is highly disruptive, but we do want to work, and that's part of our strategy for the 10 years, is to really marry our work with some outside research, whether it's Babson, whether it's Bryn Mawr, any of these other colleges. I actually lived in England for a year at Oxford. So I'm looking for anybody who wants to help us kind of do this research and really show, particularly from a third party outside view, why this is such a great idea.
Well, I'll just follow up that with, when was it? February 2020, I was interested in this, and I was just doing my own research, really, and I ended up contacting the Start Foundation in the Netherlands and asked them if they knew of any organization, any person doing similar work in the UK, and they kind of pointed me to one person working at the Judge Business School in Cambridge, who I managed to make contact with. And I think her email response just before everything shut down was, I think I may have heard of it, but I don't know of any organization operating like this in the UK. So, that's the kind of state of play. It may be that there are organizations out there doing it who just have been quietly going about it, but I think there is work to be done in the UK, despite our current condition.
Yeah.
Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah. The work to be done everywhere.
Yeah.
Thanks for the question.
Yeah, thanks, Roland. That's great. We've got a bit more time. We don't have to use it all, but if feel free if you have a question. This is really rich. Joe, I got to thank you. This is outstanding.
Thank
Ilaria, you get to go 2 times.
I think there is Ken also. Ken, did you raise your hand?
Thank you very much. Yeah, I just want to shift it to the personal level, like just one case story of how somebody came into the organization and they developed and whatever happened, but I just want that kind of level.
Mm-hmm. So thank you. I could have planted that question, actually. We just released a documentary on Greyston called Wide Open Dreams last month. I think it was. My days are running together. But it was a documentary put together by a local Westchester Community College, a group of film students who did it's about a 20-minute documentary on 3 of our employees. One is a single mother of 5. Another is a Black gentleman who was in prison, I want to say 15 years. And another woman who English wasn't her first language, although she was legal here in the United States. And they told the story of their lives and how Greyston has impacted them. And I'll give you the story of Shauna, who was the lead character, I guess, in the documentary. Shauna was the mother of 5. She had been turned down for job after job after job. She didn't have the experience. Her resume was kind of slim because she was a mother of 5. But no one would hire her. And as she would say, she wasn't male enough. She wasn't have enough experience. There was always something wrong, but everybody told her no, up until the point where she was thinking of putting her kids into foster care. Like she was actually going to get rid of her kids because she just couldn't take care of them. I think it was probably the last day of that decision that she got the call from Greyston. And she's now been with us for about 5 years. She's a lead operator and she has all of her kids with her. That's an amazing story. And when it is released, they're sending it to a bunch of film festivals. You have to watch it because when we did the release, there wasn't a dry eye in the house, because just when you hear the whole story of just what she went through and what Alvin, who's the other guy, and Maria, who's the other woman, when they talk about their stories. And it all seems like Greyston came in at just the right time, because what I didn't tell you, the list is you could be waiting for 6 months for a call from the bakery. It just depends on production and the need. It could be 6 months before you get that call, but all of these folks, they got the call at just the right time, and they're all there. They're doing well. Maria, Shauna started out as an apprentice. She's now a lead operator. Like I said, she has all of her kids. She's happy. There's no issues with her having to take care of her kids. She can provide for herself as a single mom. These are just amazing stories. So Wide Open Dreams, I can actually put the trailer in the chat so you guys could just watch a little bit of it. Probably have questions.
Okay.
Did that answer
Thank
your
you,
question, Ken?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks, Ken. And Ilaria, thank you for spotting Ken. It's a little dark in his image and I didn't see him down there.
No problem. I saw him, and since I already asked 2 questions,
There's no limit here, so
there is no limit. Good. I love questions. So I have another question on, okay, what's the role of contemplative practices or more generic mindfulness inside of Grace? So really like on the daily workflow.
Can you tell me just a little bit more? I want to make sure I understand the question. I mean, do we like?
Yeah, because you mentioned Alexander and I, we did lots of work in the area of mental health, as both advocates, and we implemented. We help a corporation to implement contemplative practices. So mindfulness or just really interfaith contemplative practices as a way to improve well-being and mental health for all the companies. And so I was just asking myself, what's the role inside of Greyston, since it's been created originally from Bernie, and Bernie as a lot of as a Zen peacemaker. I'm interested in understanding the role of contemplative practices inside of the company that he created.
Yeah, so I would say it's going to be a case-by-case basis in terms of what the needs are. So I mentioned we have some folks that have anger management issues or dealing with their temper. Grief counseling. It's really going to be driven by the person, and that's the role. We call it the employment pathmaker, the social worker that kind of helps folks with those issues. And it's available to anybody, really. It's not just for the open hires, but we'd like to make all of those resources available to all of our people so that if issues come up, this is one way you can deal with it. We used to have, pre-COVID, we would have community wellness days. Where we would introduce folks to all different sources of mental health resources. Our whole downstairs would have all different providers offering different types of services, whether it was dietary needs, you could get your flu shot. It was everything. So we try to do that. We're going to be doing more of that this year, actually focused on health, particularly dietary. As we're finding, again, COVID taught us a lot of different lessons. So we want to do a better job of taking care of ourselves, because we're seeing a lot of our folks. We've had actually a slew of deaths this year from non-COVID issues, but folks dealing with diabetes or folks dealing with all kinds of issues. So we want to show our employees, there are, other ways to eat, other ways to prepare your food, other ways to take care of yourself. So not so much focused on contemplative practices, but really just more, I think, like hiring, we have to look at wellness broadly as well. So there's dietary, there's mental, there's all different types of ways. Sometimes just taking a walk, which I do, just to kind of decompress yourself and just walk around town for a little bit. There are just ways we can do that. I'm a person of faith, so whatever faith folks are a part of, kind of tapping into those resources as well to help you kind of stay focused and, you can be your full self. Those are things we usually do. I don't know if that answered your question though.
Yes, that answered the question. Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Hilaria. Anybody else who hasn't had a chance to ask a question? We've got a few more minutes. And go ahead, Sandra. Yeah, unless I'm missing.
I would like only to know how to contact you to keep it going. Talk now with you. If I write to Jeff to ask your contact, or do you have?
Yeah. Maybe you could get it through Jeff, or if you just send an email to info@greyston.org, more than happy to follow up with you.
Yeah. To keep going, interacting, and how to make this partnership Greyston happen.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And our website will be revamped too as part of our rebranding. So we'll have a new website soon. So enjoy this one while it lasts.
Okay, maybe with a Portuguese version too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful. There's an unanticipated collateral possible benefit in the future that we didn't expect from this. Maybe activity in Brazil that
and Ecuador, hopefully.
And Ecuador too. Yeah. Anyone else? I want to thank everybody for your questions. It really made this a rich sharing and discussion. And as everyone here knows, social entrepreneurship is one of the legs that Zen Peacemakers stands on, and we have a number of our members, senior members, teachers, board members, in fact, who are involved with various activities, social entrepreneurship. So this was just a great and rich discussion. And if there are no more questions, I will once again wholeheartedly thank Joe Kenner for being our guest today. And hopefully for everybody, this kind of brings together our history of 40 years and gives it a little bit of background, and you have a better understanding of where we came from and perhaps where we're going. So